Is Felger and Maz your favorite afternoon show?
Yes, 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 yes.
Felger and Maz.
That brings us to the New England Patriots. The Patriots went to the Super Bowl behind their outstanding young quarterback, Drake May, a year ago, 28th overall. And the Patriots making their selection, they made a move to be able to get into this spot with the Texans. And now here comes the commissioner.
With the 28th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Caleb Lomu, tackle, Utah.
Gasper is brought to you by Premier Basement Waterproofing. We're on the road to Banner 19. You're on the road to Banner 19. And when it comes to waterproofing, there's only one team that puts up banner year after banner year. That's our guys at Premier. 3 generations owned by the Albert family. And now's the time to get your Cape House waterproof before the season. Gasper, now's your time to get that fancy new Cape House that you have waterproofed. So to schedule with Grace, call 844-LIVE-DRY or visit premierbasement.net. It's what? I'm sorry.
Game over for water.
Okay, that's what it is. Gasper, the draft grades are in for the Patriots and Caleb Lomu, Phil Perry, Alex Barth, among others. The consensus seems to be A-, B+, B+, A-, A-. Those are the consensus draft grades. I gave it an F. What do you give it?
Wait, you gave it an F? Why did you give it an F?
Because someone has to.
Okay.
And I have just as much chance as being right as Phil Perry with the A-. And I'll give you my case for why it's an F, but trust me, it's a 50-50 call either way. He could be right, I could be right, but I'm just going to go with F for the time being.
Okay, no, I agree on the 50-50 part of it. I would give it a B, a straight B. And the reason I give it a straight B is because I don't think he can help you this year. And if he is playing for you this year, then something's gone wrong. That means that the Will Campbell pick didn't work out the way you thought, and he can't hold down left tackle, so Lomu has to do it. So that's 2 years in a row with a rookie left tackle. It means something happened with Morgan Moses. He got hurt or he retired. That's not great. Or it means something happened to Elijah Vera Tucker, and you had to either shift your offensive line or play this kid potentially out of position at guard. And I know Elliott Wolf said last night they think that's a possibility for him that he could play guard. But I look at the pick, and I understand why they made it. But a lot of people, I think, were connecting two things that make sense but don't actually add up. In other words, the Patriots really struggled against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl and honestly the playoffs overall in pass protection. As you guys remember, Drake May set the NFL record for most sacks taken in a postseason with 21. And it's like, okay, so now you have to draft an offensive lineman. Yeah, I get that. But the way, the position he plays and the way that they've situated him, he's not situated to help them this year. He's not situated to improve that this season. Now, down the line, could he improve that? Absolutely. And that's why I give the pick a B, because it was an area of need. I think that there's the potential for him to be a starter for them, but I don't think it significantly affects how good they are in 2026.
Okay, well, here's my case for the F, and you tell me if these are true or false statements.
Okay.
He was the seventh tackle, the consensus seventh tackle in a 7-tackle draft class that wasn't considered all that good.
Yeah, I would say that's. I mean, I don't know if he was the consensus seventh. I think, some people maybe had him ahead of Blake Miller or vice versa. But overall, what you're saying about the draft class, yes, he was towards the bottom of the, sort of that first tier of guys in a draft class for tackles that people didn't think was elite. Yes.
Okay, that's point one. Point two, you just addressed. He may not start or even play in year one. Point number three, he's never played right tackle, and they've put him at right tackle already, day one.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, it depends on the guy. I mean, I think that's something I always remember Belichick talking about with Matt Light, and Bill would say, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, but he'd say, I was the genius who tried to put Matt Light at right tackle, and he was kind of self-effacing. Bill wasn't that way. And that was Bill's way of saying not everybody can just flip or switch. Now, a lot of guys can, and he'll have some time to be able to do that. And he is young at 21 years old. So I'm not as worried about that, to be honest with you, down the line as maybe some other people. Because honestly, most tackles can do it. Now, there are some guys that can't. But for now, I will trust their evaluation that he's going to be able to do that down the line.
Okay. Another point, his size, he's almost 6'7", and play style, he's not considered physical, not considered a mauler. He's considered somebody with good feet and sort of like a classic sort of pass-blocking tackle kind of thing. But given his size and his play style, he's ill-fitted at guard. He's not really an option there. True or false?
I would agree with that, but just if you look at him, so let me give you like best-case scenario, I think, for this pick. Best-case scenario for this pick is Nate Solder. What did you think of him?
Coming out, nothing. Like any of them. But I didn't have a problem with the pick at the time, I remember.
Yeah. Solder was a good player, right? And initially they started him out. The idea was he was going to start on the right, and then he became, the left tackle. I think there's some similarities there between these two guys in terms of their builds, their temperament. That was kind of one of the knocks on, Nate Solder at the time, was that for someone his size, he was a little bit of a gentle giant. So, in terms of the play demeanor, play style, I'm not that worried about that. I do tend to agree with you on the guard thing. Guards with that level of height and leverage sort of working against them, that doesn't often work out, in my opinion. And I'm sure there are exceptions, and somebody will name, a couple of them and say, oh, Gasper, you're wrong. But for the most part, I think that's too tall for a guard, and you have a leverage issue when you move in there.
Okay, and here's the last one. I've just added it to my list. He's a Mormon and a man of God, and he's coming into the pro sports' biggest den of evil and inequity that exists in pro sports. Is he a fit culturally? Because they are a bunch of cretins down there in Foxborough.
It's like having a neon XXX sign.
You guys are terrible.
That I am joking. This poor kid is in for a culture shock, the likes of which he has never experienced before.
The golden banana, the official strip joint in the New England Patriots.
He has no idea what he's walking into. I only still wish Steph Diggs was still here. But between them. But
Steph would set him straight.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let me add this, though, for your reason for the F. Yeah. So, Chris, you hear that in terms of his skill set limitations, he really is only a pass blocker. They're bringing in guys like Elijah Vera Tucker. They're bringing in that pass-blocking tight end from Miami. They probably want Drake May more under center. They want to run the ball a little bit more. Why draft a guy who really can't run block and only pass blocks?
Yeah, that will be interesting to see. Again, I know he doesn't necessarily have the most physical play demeanor, but he comes from a program at Utah where the offensive line coach is well regarded and they're supposed to be technically sound. And I would just draw the comparison to Solder, who was not, the meanest guy who ever played professional football, but was technically proficient and effective. Now, is Nate Solder going to end up in the Hall of Fame? No, he's not. But he was a good player for them. And if this guy ends up being a good player for them, let me ask you guys the $64,000 question. Because, first of all, I'm just going to say last year you hated Will Campbell because he was, too small, didn't have the wingspan, the length, whatever. This guy looks like a traditional left tackle.
More so.
Who would you rather have at left tackle, this guy or Will Campbell?
Oh, this guy ultimately is going to end up at left tackle.
Feels that way.
And that was sort of my next question. Don't you think this pick is a statement on Will Campbell as well?
Absolutely. And I know they don't want to say it, but this is hedging their bets on Will Campbell. They're hedging their bets. There's no question about it. And for them to trade up, and you heard Elliot Wolf say last night, Will Campbell's our left tackle. You also heard him ask the question, and he answered very directly. The reason they moved up was when they looked at that group of tackles, this was the last guy that they thought really deserved a first-round grade. And so just for that alone, for them to make the move up and say, we wanted to get a tackle who had a first-round grade, and I know right tackles can be guys that are impactful in today's NFL, but they're rare. The Lane Johnsons, the Penei Sewells. I always think about teams you guys covered, Felger and Mass. like Brandon Gorin was like,
it was a rotating door.
Yeah,
Greg
one of those Super Bowl
Randall,
teams.
Gorin. It was always they always had a different right tackle. Every team.
Yeah, it's just not like a glamour position. So I have a hard time, no matter what they say, believing that part of this wasn't trying to hedge their bets on Campbell, who, and I know you've mocked me for this before, Felger. I think if you move that guy inside, he could be an all-pro Hall of Fame type guard.
I just think the Hall of Fame is quite a statement, but fine.
Well, it's like the inverse of the F. You know,
Yeah,
I
fine.
have a
You're right.
50% chance of being. Why not go all in? Hall of Fame instead of saying good. It's like you saying an F. You could just say, oh, he's a C minus. He's not going to be that good, but you win F. So I'm going to go all the way too. Hall of Fame.
Going to be a Bear, be a Grizzly. Do you think, Chris, that they're in some respects just being protective of that pick last year? Because if Campbell makes more sense at guard, and this kid they just drafted makes more sense at left tackle, you know, why not just give in and put the pieces where they seem to fit better versus hanging on to this thing of trying to prove themselves right about Will Campbell?
Yeah, I think part of it is probably because that's where Campbell wants to play. He wants to prove himself right. Also, again, when you look at this, the other thing that stood out to me about this pick last night was I didn't look at it and think, wow, this is a pick that a team makes that is in a win now window. Because when you look at this pick, you're projecting ahead. You're thinking, okay, Michael Wenu's in the last year of his contract, so he probably won't be here next year. We're going to have to shift some stuff around. Morgan Moses might retire. We want to make sure we're protected. And that's, to me, the value of this draft pick. Again, and that's where I go back to what I said from the beginning, where people were like, oh, this pick makes sense for the Patriots right now. They struggled on the offensive line in the playoffs, so they draft an offensive lineman. It's not that neat and clean. So to your point, it's really more, for me, this pick, and one of the reasons I give it a B and not a higher grade is that it's really more about 2027 than it is 2026.
Well, and I'll give you another reason why they didn't just, cut bait and put him at tackle now, because he's not ready.
Yeah.
He's not ready. They say, yeah, he's our left tackle, but we're not going to make the switch until late in the year. Well, now Will Campbell's got to play left tackle for the season, and knowing that no matter how well he plays, his ass is going to get shipped to the right side or, left guard or whatever. So they're just biding time.
All right, Chris, what's next? What do you want to see them do next? What do you think's on the table? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the grade on Lomu and what I'm talking about in terms of projecting that as being more of a future pick than something that helps them right away, I think their draft is going to be made or missed by today, by what they do in rounds 2 and 3, which is really, in a lot of people's minds, the meat of this draft, where the value is in this draft, the sweet spot of this draft. I think they have to go defense. The last couple of years, you look at what they did early on in the draft. The first 4 players they drafted in each of the last 2 years were on the offensive side. They used another pick on offensive line. They have a crying need, in my opinion, to get younger, faster, more dynamic in the front 7. I would start with edge rusher, and I also think linebackers a need. And I've been saying this back to last year. I mean, last year at training camp, I thought linebacker was a need for them. I like Spillane. I know some people like Christian Ellis. I don't dislike him, but I think he's just a guy. And they could certainly put themselves in a position to upgrade in terms of edge rusher and linebacker. And luckily for them, I think there's still some guys on the board.
Chris, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you, what of those two positions, linebacker and edge rusher, which is deeper as of right now in the draft?
Edge. I would say it's edge. You have guys like Cassius Howell. Yep.
So would they
Derek
be smarter
Moore,
to
Mason Thomas, guys like that?
Would they be smarter to take the linebacker first?
That's an interesting question. It depends on whether you feel like that guy is. I wouldn't mind seeing them. Edge is like a position where I wouldn't mind seeing them double up. The old sort of double up that they used to do under. We'll take 2. We'll take 2 tight ends. We'll take 2 of these. Just because when I look at, and I think part of their calculus on edge is they maybe don't think it's as bad as we do because if Harold Landry's healthy, he's a more productive player, and he was productive before the knee injury in New Orleans. So maybe they don't think it's as much of a need as we do, but you can never have enough of those pass rush guys. And what was one of the first things Vrabel said in his opening press conference when he was introduced as coach? It was like, we want to impact, we want to affect the quarterback. They need to get better at that from the outside. And edge, this is a draft where I think you can get some edge guys in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round who could be every bit as good as the guys who went in the 1st round. The way the board fell for them last night, you see some of the guys that I liked, Akeem Mesidor, Malachi Lawrence, they went in back-to-back picks. It didn't really fall for them necessarily to take that guy at 31 or trade up to 28 for him. But that's something I really have an eye on tonight when we get to their second round pick is edge. And then linebacker, they have Spillane in there. But again, I just think more athleticism, more speed. And there are some linebackers in this draft who fit that bill.
Okay, more draft thoughts with Gasper coming up. Plus, he's got takes on Vrabel. He's got takes on Celtics, Red Sox, all coming your way with your calls right after this. Sean and Lawrence. Go, Sean.
You keep saying, I didn't actually watch the game, whether it's Patriots, Celtics, Bruins, whatever. Isn't your job as a talk show host to actually watch sports?
So I would say my job is to get you to listen.
That is the job.
Mission accomplished.
Take this job and shove. Felger and Maz, 98.5, the Sports Hub.
I feel like you have to recruit yourself to the guys that were in this locker room last year.
I have to. I just have to make them a priority. That's what I have to do. I have to make my family and this football team the priority, and I'm excited about giving them the best version of me possible, and being able to coach and teach and develop, and all those things that we talk about, that we believe in, and that we know that are important.
And all of Mike Vrabel's comments this week, the supercuts of the week. When you're thinking about your next haircut, use your head. Head to any of the 120 Boston and Providence Supercut salons. Supercuts, real smart hair. Christopher Gasper joins us from the Globe, as he does every single Friday at this hour. Chris, your thoughts on how Vrabel has handled this week and where we stand today?
Yeah, I don't think it was as smooth as it could have been. I would throw a false start flag of the way it happened. Sort of the coach version of the QB sneak on Tuesday, then not taking any of the questions on camera, which is something that both Steph Diggs and Christian Barmore had to do. And it's my understanding that in those cases, that was actually, Vrabel was actually part of encouraging those guys to do that at the time for the good of the team. So, if you're the leader of the team, in terms of accountability, you should not only match that standard, you should probably go beyond it. And that's not what happened on Tuesday. Then we found out about the counseling situation through Mike Reese and ESPN. And then yesterday, with about an hour's notice, talking before the draft. I did like the fact that he took questions on camera. I think it was important for him to do that, important for him to sort of face the music a little bit. And I thought he came across, and I thought he was, genuine and sincere in terms of what he's saying. But if you want to go back to the whole thing when this started, his initial pushback on the story that the New York Post had was just too strong. And I think it's one of Mike's greatest strength is also at times his greatest weakness, which is that he's the smartest guy in the room. And instead of maybe being in a position to sort of diffuse that story, when he pushed back so strongly, I think it just made it worse. Ultimately, in the end, and now he's having to really backtrack.
Do you think he can be the same guy going forward? For everything he's preached, family, leading by example, accountability. Yeah. If he goes back to that, does it have the same oomph behind it?
Yes.
I guess the question, Murray, I get what you're saying. It's a valid point, but for whom? For the media and the fans, probably not. But that doesn't matter for the players in that locker room, as long as they believe that he's invested in them, that he gives them a chance to win, that they're a football family. Absolutely. I don't think this is going to impact his ability to get the most out of his team or to get through to players at all.
How about the way he carries himself? His bravado, Chris, is a big
part of his personality.
Absolutely. And how he's instilled it in the program. He's a very vibey guy. And his leadership in that regard is very important and was very important to the program. He's going to come out of this a different guy. Do you think I would worry that a different Vrabel might not be as an effective Vrabel?
He struts around the place hog first, almost like Liam Gallagher of Oasis or, mid-70s Mick Jagger. Is he now going to be like Eeyore around the place?
It's true.
It is true.
Yeah, tough practice today, guys.
I think
this could change him.
I think he's temporarily, chastened. I think he's sort of temporarily diluted, but just with his personality, I think he'll eventually get back to, especially around the players and the staff. I think he will be back to, and I heard Burt Breer talk about that he has been a little bit muted. And that makes sense because he's going through what is a very, personal and embarrassing situation. So that would make sense. I think anybody would be affected personality-wise. But I just have a hard time believing that when it comes down to football, which is an area that he feels very, very comfortable and confident in when it comes to his knowledge and his acumen, that he's not going to have that same sort of bravado that he's had in the past. And that would be a bigger issue to me if he's missing that bravado with the players than it would be the idea of sort of accountability and family and make good decisions and all that other stuff.
Chris, finally, I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask you, Chris, do you think it's over?
No. Unfortunately, I don't. I don't think it's over. Just with TMZ coming out of the woodwork, there are going to be people that are going to keep sending in photos, videos, whatever. The speculation probably will continue. I don't think it's over. Unfortunately, for him, I do not think that this thing is over. He will try and make it look like it's over in terms of saying he wants to stick to football and not answer any more questions. But if there's another Page 6 report or another TMZ report with different photos we haven't heard, if there's somebody close to, somebody that says, I saw this or that, these things tend to keep going until the public is completely satiated. And I don't get the sense that the public's completely satiated when it comes to this story. I think people still have questions about, timeline. And obviously you had the New York Post story with them at the bar in 2020, timeline, how long did it go on? The New York Times and the Athletic, as far as I understand, are still doing the investigation. So when the results of that investigation come out, I think there'll be questions about were things leaked or done favorably for Mike Vrabel or for the Patriots? Was there some sort of trading of information here? I don't think this is over.
Okay, Chris, how about, is one of the lingering things the timing of this absence this weekend? It just doesn't add up to me, and makes really no sense to me about how he would miss Saturday but not Thursday, Friday, and what do you think's behind all that?
So when you say that, just so I understand, just for clear, are you saying you think this is like Michael Jordan playing from the Birmingham Barons? It's like a surreptitious suspension?
That. Correct. I would buy a surreptitious suspension more than I would buy
Almost.
the wife saying we have to go to counseling on Saturday or you have to join us on our family trip on Saturday. I would believe a de facto suspension more than that second thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I just have a hard time believing that from the standpoint of, watching Robert Kraft at the video the Patriots posted. You're sitting right next to Vrabel in the war room last night. It might be more of a sort of public relations. Like it plays better for public relations to say that you are stepping away to prioritize your family. And I do think he is trying to prioritize his family. But it also plays well from a PR standpoint of, okay, you're removing yourself from the football. It's almost like a self-punishment, right?
Yeah.
So I think that plays. I think it's more that than the team. I mean, did you guys see Roger Goodell last night with Mike Greenberg? I mean, he didn't want to touch it. Greenberg asked him about it. He's like, this doesn't, concern the personal conduct policy. He said the teams know more in this situation than we do. So it's not like Vrabel's it's like the league. At least in my mind, right? I could be wrong. It's not like in my mind the league is telling the Patriots to, you gotta suspend him.
Okay, more with Gasper coming up. We got Red Sox thoughts, Celtics thoughts heading into Game 3 tonight here on 98.5 The Sports Hub as well. First, an update from Big Jim Murray.
Felger.
Shush.
Maz. The Sports Hub.
Maz's opening take, I'm going to paraphrase, says we are up here about 1,000 feet in the air.
Something like that.
Okay, we're up here at the very top of the city, looking out over the entire city, and can just see into everything. All looks like little dots and little ants from up here. But Maz,
isn't this like the view from your place in the seaport, Felger?
I'm on the 8th floor, not the 50th. Okay. So, but okay. my view's not too shabby. And now that you bring it up, but it ain't this.
I'm aware.
Maz's opening take was, though, that he can still see that the Red Sox suck. Chris, your thoughts?
That's pretty good. I like that, Maz. Yeah, that's a good one. You know what? It's not they've committed the cardinal sin of Boston sports in my mind. It's not just that they're bad; they are so painfully boring to watch.
Yep.
I mean, there's no juice, and to me, it looks like, Breslow went to ChatGPT and typed in, "Tell me the most cost-effective way to build a playoff team," and this is what it spit out. And they're just following it step by step. There's no personality, and I know somebody will say Contreras. To me, he's just kind of like a Draymond Green whiner. They have no offense. There's no entertainment value at the plate. I mean, I find it hard to believe that they're this bad. They scored 2 runs or fewer in 7 of their last 9 games. But my overall thought is just the hubris of the organization to think that they can just kind of mix and match and patch and figure it out on the fly with a bunch of prospects and platoon guys and maybe everyday players and high-end role players is just galling. And the more you watch the team, the more you look at it and say, well, one of the best parts of this team should be the manager, right? He's, whatever you think of him, he is one of the more proven parts of the team. He's won a World Series. He's been to the playoffs on multiple occasions. Somehow they've built a roster that even neuters the manager's ability to help them because the pieces just don't fit. This is one of the most poorly constructed teams, and I don't mean just, talent. I mean pieces fitting together. This is one of the most poorly constructed Red Sox teams that I can remember.
So, Chris, I think your general point is they're worse than their talent. Whether or not they're good, they're worse than their talent. Is that generally what you were?
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like at this point, whatever the individual talent is, it doesn't feel like it meshes together cohesively to spit out a consistent, productive lineup.
Agree. And I think I have an answer for you on that. Because they're stupid on top of it. They are. And again, Chris, I come back to that 7th inning last night. They had a 2-1 lead in the game. They give up 3 runs in the top of the 7th. And I know not a lot of people are watching them right now, especially with all the playoffs and as bad as they are. I get it. But this, to me, is a critical thing to point out. They fell behind 4-2. They got to the bottom of the inning, and Wilyer Abreu, on the second pitch of the at-bat, got a single. So they now have the leadoff man on, down 4-2, and have a chance to get something going. The Yankees get out of the inning with just 4 pitches total. They got a double play on the next pitch, and then Meyer lined out. It was a 4-pitch inning. That's it. And for the series, for last night, the Yankees threw just 107 pitches, 109 pitches, whatever the number was. I mean, it's not only that they can't hit, their at-bats suck because their approach sucks. They can't hit. They're not smart about the way they hit. I mean, it's a train wreck. It might be the worst offensive Red Sox team we've ever seen right now.
And who do you blame, Chris? Who's at the top of the blame pie?
I mean, for me, I have to go with Breslow because he said he identified last offseason what they needed. He said a disproportionate amount of runs in the playoffs come from home runs. He identified that they needed power, and he wasn't able to acquire it for whatever reason. And maybe people will say that's an ownership thing. Ketel Marte was a guy they couldn't bring in. Maybe the Diamondbacks asked for too much. I don't know, but he correctly identified what the team needed and then didn't do anything about it and then pivoted, which is their favorite word down there. Pivoted. We pivoted to this, which I would say, pivot is just sort of a euphemism for gave up and went with this run prevention thing, which could work if, to Maz's point, you had a team that was more fundamentally sound and was a better situational hitting team, which they don't have because their issue is they're not great fundamentally at the plate. They're not great situationally, but they also don't have a ton of power. I believe they're last in Major League Baseball in slugging percentage. So if you're not going to generate a lot of extra base hits or home runs, then you have to do all the little things well, and they don't.
Gasper, one more thing before we get some phone calls with you. Celtics, Sixers, Game 3. Series resumes tonight. What you saw the other night from the Celtics, one-off or cause for concern?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, how do you feel about your Celtics. I mean, I know you said we. You lapped into the NBC Sports Boston speak there on the read. So
we're on the road.
Are you
to
concerned?
Banner 19. We.
Are you concerned about your Celtics, Felger?
Not in this series, but I thought they had put games like the other night behind them. I thought they had outgrown that, and apparently they haven't. So I said this the other night. I'll say it again. If they try and play that way going forward, they will lose. I don't know who. I don't know when. But just like I said it last year, if they try and shoot more threes than twos, if they put the ball in Jason Tatum's hands too much in the fourth quarter as opposed to Jaylen Brown, I've added that second thing, but it's really that first thing, they will lose. So I would be concerned if I were a Celtics fan, big picture, that they have not put games like that behind them. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not concerned about it. I understand your larger point in terms of the threes. I know I'm going to sound like Missoula, but I thought most of them were good looks. I think it was a one-off in terms of how well Philadelphia shot from three. That being said, I expect some adjustments by Missoula defensively. That doesn't mean they're going to abandon the drop coverage, but they might switch it up a little bit more. The 76ers were 23rd in the NBA in three-point shooting percentage. They had been the worst three-point shooting team in the league since March 1st. The 76ers really had two extremes, right? They're 4 for 23 from three in the first game. There were a lot of shots there that they should have made that they didn't. And then obviously in the second game, the way they were able to shoot, they started 0 for 6. They finished 13 for 39, 19 for 39. So they shot 19 of 33 after the 0 for 6 start. They're not that good at three-point shooting. And I love VJ Edgecombe as a player. He's not that good at three-point shooter. I think this is one of those games that was sort of an anomaly. For the Celtics, big picture, just beyond the series, though, I think you have to get Derek White and Peyton Pritchard on track. You know, those guys have not shot the ball well at all in this series. They're averaging about 17 points combined in the series. They're shooting 20% combined from three. They are going to need those guys, maybe not so much in this series, but to get to the finals, to try and win a championship, they need those guys playing really well because they were a huge part of the team's success this year for the first 62 games without Jason Tatum. And I think if it's just left to Tatum and Brown, that's a big ask. I know we can boil it down in the NBA to stars, and the Celtics certainly do have the stars, but they are going to need some help at some point in one of these series. And having Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, like, I don't know, the other night, you know, Derek White is one of the smartest players, I think, in the league, and he's a very efficient player. He had as many assists as turnovers. You're not going to find a lot of Derek White games where he has as many assists as turnovers, 3 and 3. So they need to get those guys on track so they can get through this series, get some rest, and build up that confidence for those guys in the playoffs moving forward and have the team firing on all cylinders.
All right, Chris, I promise, going to take some calls with Gasper in our long commercial-free segment next.
Mike and Tony have a definite chemistry.
Are they? 100%.
Are they?
Yes, 100. Do I stutter?
Do you
consider them the periodic table of sports talk?
Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Sorry, we need to blow a gasket.
No, blow it, baby, blow it.
Felger and Maz.
I just refer to the statement. That's a personal thing that Mike's dealing with and going through, and obviously we support him. As far as the work is concerned on Saturday, not too worried about that. Just as far as the process that we have in place, the people that we have in place, and it's going to be different without his presence there. But we feel really good about the people that we have in place to make up for it.
Do you feel like you guys will be able to get in contact with him if anything arises?
Yes.
Elliot, what will you be missing without Mike?
The stability of him as a person, some of the leadership, some of the presence. He does a nice job for us with the undrafted players. Obviously, he's a tremendous recruiter. So that's maybe something that we'll be missing. But again, we're very confident in the people we have with the process. The assistant coaches have done a tremendous job, as have the scouts, preparing for day 3, and we're excited about it.
Will you have final say on the pick Saturday?
Yes.
Christopher Gasper, does that scare you?
No, I mean, that doesn't scare me. And look, Ryan Cowden will still be in there, and they'll certainly have Vrabel's thoughts and sentiments. And the indication from last night, based on the reporting and what Vrabel said, is that if they need to reach him, they can reach him. So I think this whole day three thing is kind of overblown, to be honest with you. And I could be wrong. I mean, I know There's people who are, know more about this than I do in terms of, but like you're talking about 6th and 7th round picks, guys that aren't all that different from undrafted free agents, and they're going to have Elliott Wolf, Ryan Cowden, Matt Groh, Alonzo Highsmith. I look at the 6th and 7th round, and I know round 5 is part of day 3 too, but I look at 6 and 7. Those are a lot of times that's like when you do a scout or a positional coach a solid. It's like you feel strongly about this guy. Okay, we'll take him. I don't know, like if you need the head coach there, it's. I don't see like day 3 being like Vrabel being mad about somebody they drafted the way McVay was pissed last night about Ty Simpson.
Chris, is that really the story though? In other words, how many other teams in the league is the head coach skipping out on the final day of the draft?
No, you're right. But I sort of question how many of these head coaches actually really, really know the prospects that we're talking about when we get to the 6th and 7th round.
Okay, again, I understand that part of it, but that's not really the story. The story is that the coaches are going to stick around for the draft.
And how many head coaches are the team's lead decision maker, which is what Vrabel is.
Right. So, and I understand. I agree with you on the premise of what the draft is, but that's true every year, no matter what. Like I guess
what I'm saying is I just don't think it's going to affect the team. Now, if you want to talk about the optics of it, I think that's different, and we can talk about that. But the idea that somehow it's going to impact the team negatively or the draft, I don't see it.
Do you think the Vrabel scandal's affecting the team now?
In terms of the draft and like what they're able to do, or just in terms of the scrutiny?
Anything.
Well, the scrutiny's obvious.
The scrutiny, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure there's players that are going to be asked about it throughout the course of the offseason program that don't want to be asked about it. Does it affect their ability to execute the draft or execute an A.J. Brown trade? I don't think it does, no.
All right, well, what if the franchise's lead decision maker is distracted? Is that possible here?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, again, let's dial it back a little bit, because I understand what you guys are saying, lead decision maker. But one of the things about bringing in Mayo, and then even in bringing in Vrabel and keeping Elliott Wolf, is they didn't want to go back to this Bill Belichick model. If this were Bill Belichick missing day 3, then I'd be like, I hear what you guys are saying, like, oh my God, like Bill's not in the room. But they've set this thing up to have a system of checks and balances, and they don't really, yes, Vrabel's the lead decision maker, but they don't want it to be a dictatorship down there. They want it to be more collaborative. So if it were the old setup under Bill, I get what you're saying, but that's not what they want, and that's not what they have.
So, Chris, look, I'm not even going to push back on that part of it in terms of how they set it up. I guess I would ask you is, do you think Vrabel's acting the same way now that he was last year at the draft?
That's a good question. I don't know. So
you see my point? In other words,
yes.
I think that, I think in a lot of ways, this whole experience and controversy, scandal, trauma, it's a life trauma, what he is going through right now. And if he is being, a little bit more deferential inside the building than he otherwise has been in the past, would that surprise you?
No, and I see what you're saying there, that could be something that hurts them. But again, I would be surprised I think right now, football is something that Mike Vrabel can go to. That's like a refuge, right? That's like a refuge for him. That's where everything is, relatively speaking, still the same. So I would be surprised if he had changed his attitude that much, when it comes to sort of football. But I hear what you're saying. If somehow he feels cowed or that he has to be deferential because he's brought, embarrassment to the organization, that would impact decisions, and it could potentially negatively impact decisions. I just don't think the day 3, I don't think they're going to miss out on the next Tom Brady in the 6th round because Vrabel's at counseling.
Yeah, but Chris, don't you realize, though, if any of these guys do happen to see the field, and odds are they probably won't, but if they do and they impact the team in a negative way, someone fumbles, end of the game, they lose.
Yeah.
And they're now going to, any of these players that do make the field will be looked at as, well, it'll be marked, from this scandal. That people will remember that. They'll be the Doin' 7 or the Sedona 7, whatever the hell you want to call them.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. Conversely, the other way will be like if they end up being pretty good, he'll probably take credit for them. It's kind of like when the Red Sox traded for Josh Beckett and Theo wasn't around, and people forget that Theo had nothing to do with that deal.
Yeah, I don't forget it.
But it worked out, right? That worked out, and it just sort of goes. It's part of the record at that point. I hear what you're saying in terms of that. If there's some player there who ends up being a complete disaster or whatever, I don't know. I mean, if they go back and draft another 1%er kicker or something like that,
All right, Chris, we have Gasper and Murray tomorrow?
We do. Jared Stillman will, known Vrabel critic, will join us at 1 p.m.
Good. We'll roll
that should be good.
Definitely.
That's breaking news to me. That should be very interesting.
Keeping you on your toes, Chris.
I love it. All right, Chris, thanks as always. We appreciate it.
All right, take care, guys.
See you, Chris.
90 seconds, no commercials. Then I know I promise it all the time, but I really mean it this time. Right to your phone calls. Don't go anywhere.